حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله بسم الله بسم الله.
Good evening. You're listening to the Dawah Hour with Dr. Tahir Wyatt and Imam Hanif Faus. Dr. Wyatt and Imam Faus are United Muslim Masjid's resident scholar and resident imam. Enjoy and learn for the next hour as they make Islam plain to our audience and answer life's many questions.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله.
But it's harder to do. Gotta talk a line, go hard for the truth. My brothers ain't scared to death and go hard for the youth. But the youth is going hard for the convertible coupe. I say, I'm trying to go hard and verse with the crew. Converse my crew with the words from the code. Say, it's cool, make it do what it do. But don't be in love with a system that's murdering you.
The world is testing me, but you said keep on shining.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam Today. 900 on your FM dial, 96.1 on your FM dial, and WURD.com, WURDradio.com on the internet. Also on Facebook at onWURD, FORWURD, Twitter at onWURD, Instagram at onWURD, and Tumblr at onWURD. And today is Saturday, July the 11th, 2020 on the Gregorian calendar, and it's the 20th of Dhul Qadda, 1441 on the Hijri calendar. We began by opening up and saying that all the praise belongs to Allah. Therefore, we praise Him. We seek His forgiveness. We seek His help. We seek refuge with Almighty God from the accursed enemy, Shaitan. And we seek refuge with God from those evil things that emanate from within our very own souls. Let it be known, whomever Allah guides, no man can misguide, and whomever Allah permits to go astray, no man can guide. And then we close with the Kalima Shahadatain, and that is the two-part statement that every Muslim makes at least 5 times in his daily routine of making prayer. And that is, I bear witness and give open testimony. There's nothing, no deity worthy of worship except Almighty God Allah. He is alone. He has no associate nor partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad ibn Abdullah, unto whom the Quran was revealed, over 1400 years, 1440 years ago, is his slave servant and final messenger. And welcome again to Islam Today. Like I said, it's Saturday, July the 11th, 2020. It's not officially a heat wave. They say an official heat wave is when you hit 90 for 3 days in a row. We've hit 89 for 3 days in a row. And it surely does feel like a heat wave. And so today we're going to be revisiting the topic that we covered last week, and we're covering it this week with a very special guest. It's called Low Carb Living and Metabolic Health. And we have one of the leading, I would say that our guest is probably, at least within the Muslim community, one of the leading authorities, you know, and then when you narrow it down to Black Muslima, probably in that intersectionality, the hands down authority on metabolic health, fitness, and this new craze called low carb, high fat diet. I'm talking about the one and only Mubaraka Ibrahim. She is internationally renowned health and fitness expert with over 20 years of experience in the personal wellness industry. She has earned 13 fitness and nutrition certificates and holds an interdisciplinary Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science, Public Health, and Psychology from Southern Connecticut State University. Sister Mubaraka has gained a reputation as a leader in innovative fitness for women and as an entrepreneur. She has appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, 30-something in America, and has also been featured on the covers of business sections of the Chicago Tribune. She is an expert fitness contributor to the Prevention Magazine, the New York Times, Aziza Magazine, and Experience Life magazines. In both 2012 and 2013, Mubaraka was a special guest at the White House Iftar dinner with President Barack Obama, and she lectures and conducts workshops on health, fitness, and healthy living, and business throughout the world. She lives in New Haven, Connecticut with her husband and close to her 4 adult children. Well, alhamdulillah. And she is the author of MR40 Method, the 40-day guide to reset your metabolism, lose weight, and optimize your health. Without further ado, Assalamu alaikum Mubaraka.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Alhamdulillah. It took a while, but we got you. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. We're so excited. And as you can tell, you know, as a newbie, I'm so excited to be a part of this new diet, new life. And I know you're going to correct me. The ketogenic diet is not a new diet. It's just a diet that has been resurfaced and I think brought to the fore. And now it is like a Hollywood craze type diet, but it is something that is very practical. So please tell us what events in your life brought you to low carb, high fat, and intermittent fasting.
So for me, I think that I found it very similar to the way that many people find it, is I needed to lose weight. Mm-hmm. And what I had been doing most of my career, most of my adult life, just stopped working, and which was, you know, high carb, low fat, make sure you're eating whole grains and you're counting your calories and you're working out 5 days a week. And I was doing all of those things, and I was super, super fit, but the weight would not budge. And I remember specifically it really was around my 40th birthday, because for my 40th birthday, the gift that I gave to myself is I decided to become Army fit. Now, I had no intention of joining the Army, but I needed a goal. So I looked up the requirements that if I was to join the Army at 40, what would they want me to do?
Okay.
And it was doing a certain amount of push-ups in 2 minutes, running at a certain speed. I don't remember all of the particulars, but I achieved it. And I was literally probably one of the fittest times in my life. But I was not losing weight. And I'm like, how does this happen? How do you run a 7-minute mile and still be overweight?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, I went to the doctor several times, and probably like many people, like, is there something wrong with my thyroid? Can you test this? Can you test that? Everything came back great, and my doctor was just like, oh, it just comes with age. But I refused to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled out my exercise and nutrition textbook from college, and I literally was like, there has to be something else. There has to be a different solution because this is not working. I was literally counting every calorie, every macronutrient, everything I put in my mouth, and it wasn't working. And so I found a small chapter, it wasn't even a big part of the book, on ketogenic eating. And I remembered, and it jogged my memory from talking about it in class, and I started going through my notes, and I was like, this is worth a try. And that is actually how I came across it. I didn't come across it on the internet as most people did. I actually literally found some research that was cited inside my exercise and nutrition book from college.
So you weren't a chubby kid because your journey, because my journey started with my metabolic health just went haywire, and I developed diabetes and all kinds of other things. And then I went into the vegan world and so on and so forth. So my journey, I think maybe I was 50 when it really started to cause me a great deal of alarm. But I hear a lot of people saying that they were chubby kids and that they've been dieting all their lives and so on and so forth. I didn't pay attention to my diet till I was about 45 or 50. Does that encapsulate what you just said? When you hit 40, that's when your dieting journey began?
So my dieting journey definitely did not begin when I was 40. So I wasn't really a chubby kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember being particularly like any bigger than my average friends that I was around. I became very health conscious probably when I was about 12 or 13, that I can definitely remember like a shift in what I was intentionally trying to do, because I was always concerned about developing diabetes. When my mom got pregnant with my little sister, I was about 7 years old, and she got gestational diabetes, and it never went away. And it just developed a full-blown diabetes. And I saw how it affects her life. I saw, her not feeling well. Even as a child, I could see a difference because of her diabetes. And I remember times where me and my siblings would sit around and we would literally talk about like what we inherit physically from our mom. This person got her hair and this person got her legs. And we would talk about who was going to get her diabetes. Like it was like, it was just like, having her legs or having, I can remember as a young teenager saying like, well, y'all can have the diabetes part because I'm not,
Right.
like I did not want it.
Didn't want that.
I definitely did not want that. And I knew very early on, without even like having the actual knowledge, just something, I was like, what? It has to be food and it has to be movement. Right?
And it was, and it brought you back to calories. So
you
with the,
know what? That's how it actually started, because that is what I was reading in.
and that's what everybody's told.
Right. Right.
Reduce calories and move more. Now, tell us why that's such a fallacy. Calories, because when I tell people that calories in versus calories out is such a fake out, they're looking at, no, this is traditional. This is time honored. This is the way that we were taught to lose weight and we were taught to eat.
So it is a fallacy because I tell people calories is not like a bank account. What you put in is what you're going to get out. Calories is more like the stock market. Everyone is worth something different. And the way that if I can use the example of, there's a research study in which a researcher, and I'm going to try to remember the name of it. It's an entire lecture that's actually on YouTube. He actually did a lecture on it. And they tracked consuming 100 calories of orange juice, alcohol, and white bread. Alcohol like, vodka,
Okay.
alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's 100 calories. Each one was 100 calories worth of consumption.
Right.
And this is a good example of how your body just metabolizes calories different. We know that alcohol, for example, the human body does not have the ability to metabolize alcohol. When you take it in, it's looked at as poison, and it kicks in the liver's trying to get rid of it. What they found that when a person consumes alcohol, that actually about 70% of those calories will go directly into fat. This is also something that is, if I can use probably an example that's probably more attuned to what Muslims do. If you look at different sugars, high fructose corn syrup, for example, versus raw sugar. So we're just using two sugars. They're both the same amount of calories. What we find, the reason why high fructose corn syrup is different in the way that it is metabolized. Now, they both are going to work on your insulin the same way. But when we talk about how it's stored for fat, when you consume high fructose corn syrup, your body literally takes it, converts it into fat. The liver converts it into fat first before you can burn it. As opposed to if you actually took in raw sugar, your body, say you're going for a run, you're running a marathon, and you have to take the glucose, your body can use it immediately, right? If a marathoner was to, in the middle of his race, start taking in high fructose corn syrup, his body actually would not be able to use that.
He wouldn't benefit from it.
Right. It would have to be turned into fat and then turned back into energy, as opposed to straight glucose can actually go straight into energy. So everything that you take in, your body metabolizes it differently, which means the process in which you're using it for energy is different. Some have to take a diverted detour, like high fructose corn syrup. Some can go directly into energy. So it's all about how your body converts that particular calorie or the source of that calorie, as opposed to the calorie itself.
So now, in the low-carb community, glucose, sucrose, fructose, sucrose, all of it, that's the enemy, right?
I hate using enemy as a...
Well, my thing is, my mantra is sugar is what? Sugar.
Yes, you're right. So I think that it's important that people understand the concept of the reason why a person may want to go low carb. We have an amazing machine of a body, and our body actually converts energy two different ways. So the way that most people are using, think of it as the fuel for energy. Most people are using carbohydrates as their fuel. But what happened, say, 100 years ago, when only thing that you were eating was the things that you were farming, and then there was a drought, or it was a really hard winter, and you didn't have any more wheat or fruit or grains or anything
or
like
before
that.
the time before agrarian society, when they were, hunters and gatherers.
How do people survive off of that? Our body actually has a second source of energy. I like to call it our generator, right? So I explain it often as electricity that we use to light our house. Most people use regular electrical lines, right? The electrical lines go to the house, give the house energy. That is carbohydrates. Most people use carbohydrates. But when there's a storm and the electrical line is cut and there's no electricity going to your house, then a generator kicks on. It gives the same amount of energy. It's just as efficient. It does all of the things electricity is supposed to, but it's just coming from a different source. That generator is you being in ketosis.
And the source of fuel being fat?
The source of fuel being fat. So as opposed to the carbohydrates and being the electrical line, now you're cutting that off, and now your generator, in real life the generator is used by gas. This is fat. Both your body fat and your consumed fat. So a lot of people are under the assumption and misunderstanding that we need carbohydrates. We actually don't need carbohydrates.
You can live without carbs, right?
Feel good.
And you can live without carbs, right?
Huh?
You can live with a human being can survive or live a healthy existence with well, you're going to get carbs because carbs and veggies and fruits and things like that. So what I call incidental.
We live without carbs. We can thrive without carbohydrates.
I like that. I like
You
that.
can absolutely. So an example of that is it wasn't until about the 1950s or 60s that science actually thought that you had to have carbohydrates for your brain. They were like, okay, everything else can about carbs, but you need carbohydrates for your brain. Then they did some tests with people on ketosis versus not on in ketosis, and they found out that the brain actually works 25% better in memorizing things when you are in ketosis. So not only do we not need carbohydrates for our brain actually works better when it's
exactly particularly. So we're going to get into that, especially how you accentuate it and raise that level to using intermittent fasting and extended fasting. But in your preface, you state that before we begin any journey, we have to, because we've been taught. I don't even know if it's nutritionist experts, because most nutritionist experts, when I was diabetic and they sent me to the nutrition class, the nutritionist told me, oh, you can have one slice of pizza and a scoop of ice cream. And now I know it's like, if I was an alcoholic, she said I could have a shot of Henny, or if I was a drug addict, I could take a hit of crack. Just do it in moderation. and that was the worst advice. But the nutritionist, who's a licensed nutritionist who went to school for that, gave me that advice. And it was terrible advice, because I went home and I bought a pizza. And I said, I'm going to have a slice. And I wound up knocking the whole pie back, And I said, I'm going to have a scoop of ice cream. And I wound up damaging myself more because I couldn't stop. Once you start eating carbs, there's cheap source of energy, but it burns very quickly. And so you got to keep stoking that engine. And you do it with carbs. So you've got in a chapter in your book that says, unlearn what we have to learn.
So that's a really important point. Like, a lot of people will say, well, don't we need to eat every 3 to 4 hours?
Wow, yeah?
Only reason why people eat every 3 to 4 hours is because they are so dependent on carbohydrates for energy. Most carbs are completely metabolized within 3 hours.
Yes.
So after 3 hours, you are actually tired and you don't have energy because you've used up all the carbohydrates, and now you need to re-up on your carbs, right? It's like somebody that's addicted to coffee or addicted to drugs. Like, after it wears off, you got to get more of it.
But when you eat that fat,
increased source is fat, it actually lasts you much longer.
Much longer.
You're not hungry every 3 to 4 hours, and it's not even about, hey, I have to eat at a certain point. Your body will naturally tell you.
Right.
Okay,
you're satiated.
not every 3 to 4 hours.
Right. So, okay, for the listening audience, they're not all Muslims. We're going to get into the fasting for the Muslims as well. Tell us, what is fat, or what is good fat, I guess?
So I think anything that is not processed is good fat. So some people will say, oh, but stay away from animal fat. If you are eating a low-carb diet, then enjoy the chicken skin, enjoy the fat on your steak.
Yo, that fat, that juicy fat on the steak, and really, it's hard to find a steak that's not lean, or burgers that aren't lean in the supermarket.
That is true, because we have been so inundated with the brainwashing that fat is bad.
Fat is bad.
So it's really interesting. So there is a show that my family enjoys. It's one of the very few reality TV shows. It's called Alone. Have you ever seen it?
No.
So Alone is a show. It is a competition between people where they drop them off in the middle of nowhere. They've done it in the desert.
Is that like Naked and Afraid or something?
Yes, but they're not naked.
Oh. That's the halal version.
Yeah, I guess technically it is like that. So they drop them off with a backpack and 10 items. There's not even a than the other competitors. So they don't even know how long they have to be out there. I think season 1, they was out there for like 20 days, and then by season 7, they've been out there for like 90 days.
Right.
But they have to survive on whatever they can forage and catch. And throughout the show, it's really interesting because as they're eating everything from, they're trying to get squirrels, they're catching fish,
they're trying to get protein, right?
Anything. The interesting thing is, as they talk about, because these people who are professional survivalists, they're always trying to find the fat. They're like,
Right.
I need fat for energy. Fat is what's going to help me to survive. Like, if you just watch the show just listening to the nutritional stuff that they talk about.
Right. I'm going to have to look at it. Because even on Survivor, I've seen contestants.
I was watching it one day, and my husband was like, hey, they're eating a keto diet.
Right. And I've seen contestants on Survivor say they put on 20 pounds of fat just so they could survive out there. That you literally live off the body fat, correct?
Yes, yep. Many of them, the last season that I watched, the man who won, he said that he had put on 30 pounds before coming out there just so that he can survive.
Right.
Because so they're out there alone, but I think that they go check on them like every 14 days and they weigh them. And if they lose more than, I believe it's like 20% of their body weight, then they have to pull them out for medical reasons because there's so much in such a short amount of time. So they do check on their health while they're out there, but they don't give them any assistance other than that. But their body fat is what is keeping them going. And so at this point, we've watched about 3 seasons, so we know when the people.
I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna have to look for this show.
He's not gonna make it. He's too skinny. He don't got no body fat. But yeah, so a part of the show, they talk about like the nutrition and what they are eating. Like and they'll put on the screen like this particular animal has this amount of protein in it, this amount of fat, and it's all about the fat and the protein.
Right.
Because our body can survive without carbohydrates, but we cannot survive without fat.
Without fat and protein. So unlearning what we've learned, and I was in a school, a charter school, elementary school the other day, and on the floor of the cafeteria they've got the pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the widest portion of food you should be consuming, is what? Carbohydrates. And at the top, the smallest portion you should be consuming is fats. Well, actually, they say low fat or fats and protein. And it's actually reversed. And it's caused, and then so when this governmental guideline came out, I think in the 80s, and it was really controlled by the food industry, lobbying Congress and lobbying the FDA. And so it convinced people that a high carbohydrate diet and a low protein, low fat diet was what was beneficial. And it made sense. If you don't want to get fat, don't eat fat. But it's really totally the opposite, you know. And so now there's a movement because I think the governmental guidelines are coming out and they're still advocating the same thing, high carbs, low protein, but there is such a movement within the world, I guess, when you see this low carb, all of these conventions and so on and so forth, but we don't see this. I watch these, I've attended several virtual conventions online. I see whole families of white clumps, you know, mom, dad, the son, the daughter, and they've lost like 1,000 pounds within the family, and everybody at this convention don't look like us. Why is it not? And I mean, you're probably one of the leading authorities that is, you know, a black Muslim out here. Why aren't our people embracing low carb living?
I think one of the reasons why we're not embracing low carb living is that it is so hard to convince black people not to eat macaroni and cheese.
And cornbread. Right.
It sounds crazy, but it,
yeah.
And so let me put it in context. So that's tongue in cheek, just really, you know, but I think that one of the reasons why is that we are, as a community, sort of late to the health game.
Yes.
Right? We have been working on
the nutritional health game.
Right. We have been working on surviving for so long. We are just in the last couple generations able to say, hey, let me choose a food that is healthier for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And veganism is the rabbit hole, correct?
It is the rabbit hole. When my mom grew up, and even I have this conversation with my mother-in-law, you know, for them, their food was survival food. It did not matter whether or not it was healthy or if it was better for you. The fact that you just had something on your plate and you were able to eat, that was healthy.
And
right?
and carbs are cheap.
How it affected your body wasn't even a thought process. I tell people that in my house growing up, health was a word that was mentioned just as often as every other Chinese word. Never.
Right. Or when you were dying, he's got bad health.
Right. We never talked about health. It was never even a conversation of this.
So then why are blacks so drawn to veganism? Vegan soul food is like the hottest business in Manhattan and in Harlem and Philly, and you know, it's real, you know, and it is the veritable rabbit hole. I was listening to a podcast or the Breakfast Club this morning with Russell Simmons, and he said that some studies showed that blacks are 3 times more likely to commit to a vegan diet than anybody else.
You know what? I just think that it's and which is true. I actually was reading some.
I think it's the hip and it's the fad, right?
I think that it's not just hip and a fad. I think that black people are trying to rediscover some type of culture. You know, as African Americans, our culture has been taken away. And let's be clear on it. Veganism is not a fad for black folks. It is a fad for African Americans. When you talk to Africans,
they've been eating vegetables all their life.
Talking about ain't nobody vegan in my family. You talk to Afro Latinos, it is not a fad. It is a fad for African Americans, black people of enslaved African descent. And I believe that part of the reason is because it is this new resurgence of trying to grab onto culture, and create culture, and there's no consciousness of it actually
having a health benefit,
having a root in something. I mean, even if we talk about, okay, I'm going to connect back to my African roots, veganism is not a thing in Africa.
Yo, I was the fattest vegan you would ever want to meet. I was a vegan for about 16 months, and I ballooned to like 230. And when I found out that McDonald's fries was fried in vegetable oil, I was supersizing twice a day. You know, so.
But I think that it's because another thing too is why people are vegan also change. So for people, so my philosophy on veganism is that veganism is actually a privilege of our society. If we did not live in a society where we had refrigeration, where we had transportation, this sophisticated transportation where we can fly something from. My daughter just got a whole box of freshly picked tropical fruits flown from Jamaica, delivered to our door in 24 hours. Follow some guy on Instagram and ordered some box. Vegan, the fact that you have access to be able to make
be a vegan, that's what blacks say. Veganism is expensive.
But the fact that you can even make these things and eat vegan all the time is a mark of privilege. If you lived in nature, if you farmed, you would not be able to be vegan, or you'll be eating squash for 3 months out of the year. You'll eat this for 3 months out. Like, most people wouldn't be able to sustain. Veganism is a privilege of being in modern society. It is a necessity because of excess.
Because our ancestors ate meat.
Say, when people say, like, and I love her to death, not to talk bad about her, like Tabitha Brown is probably the most famous black vegan right now, right? Because it cured wrong with her. If there's a movie called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, which is another movie that talks about veganism. And this man, he had so many allergies, like he literally could not touch people because he would break out in hives if he really felt sweat. When you spent years and years of eating the wrong thing, years and years of abusing your body, of course, when you take out all of the things that you've eaten in excess, you're going to feel better.
Right. Because isn't veganism almost a partial answer? Like, I felt when I went to veganism, I gave up a lot of carbs. So I kind of felt good initially. But then when the vegan cheats came along, I found ways to consume carbs again because I wasn't eating, I was eating seitan, fake meat, and stuff like that. I wasn't eating the vegetables. I was eating all the cheap foods.
It also has to do with why you are vegan, right? For people who are vegan for ethical reasons, not just because, hey, I just want to cut out meat because meat is bad.
Yeah, they're culturally vegan.
If you're just cutting out meat because meat is bad for you and meat is bad for the environment, then you can have Oreos for dinner, and that would be fine. You're still vegan, right?
Right, Skittles
but
is vegan.
But if you go with an ethical point of view of, hey, I'm not going to eat the things that are processed. I'm not going to eat the things that are from big pharma. I'm going to eat. Then it's going to significantly limit the stuff that you eat. You'll be eating at home a lot more, and you'll be eating a whole lot more vegetables. That's a different kind of vegan than, hey, I'm getting ready to make me a vegan cream cheese cake.
Right.
It's a completely different type of vegan.
Chock full of sugar and carbs.
Right. So it's how you do veganism that can backfire on you.
So why
but
is
even as
go ahead.
Vegan, there's lots of people don't research enough or have enough knowledge to sustain it. So we know that it is a fad for African Americans, that they are 3 to 4 times more likely to be vegan. But we also know that 80% of people who say they are vegan, within 18 months, they are no longer
They're no longer vegan. So
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about low-carb living. We know the benefits, some of the extraordinary benefits of it is it relieves your sugar, your glucose levels go down, and it has all your inflammation goes down. People have reported that their arthritis has improved, their asthma has improved, and all of these different conditions have improved. And so what is the other aspect of low carb living that you are really an expert on is this concept of intermittent fasting. And it seems like, you know, the two are going hand in hand. And so now the fad or the buzzwords are low carb or keto and intermittent fasting. Why does, well, maybe I'm wrong, but tell us, why does intermittent fasting kind of like jumpstart or kickstart your keto?
So intermittent fasting is actually a version, what a lot of people don't actually realize, it's actually a version of ketogenic eating. The ketogenic eating is ketogenic because its purpose is to get you into ketosis, to cause your body to burn fat instead of carbohydrates. Intermittent fasting, the goal is the exact same thing. So people will say, well, I don't do keto, but I do intermittent fasting. Then you do a keto. It's just keto on a temporary basis. You're just doing keto for 15 hours a day, right? So the reason why they go hand in hand is a ketogenic diet is actually an evolution from intermittent fasting. It was discovered because of intermittent fasting. So back in the 1920s, there was a doctor who had claimed that he cured 80% of his patients who were children who were resistant to prescription medication to manage their seizures.
Epilepsy.
Yep. So he said that he cured 80% of them with a 30-day water fast, right? And he presented this at a conference, and everybody was actually astounded. And that began the research of when they found out, hey, he's actually onto something. This is actually stopping epilepsy.
Yeah, it cured him, right.
They began to actually research what was the metabolic process in the body body that was happening during the fast. And the metabolic process was the body going into ketosis and using fat as fuel, and all of when the insulin drops and you use fat as fuel, and then it increases BDNF in the brain, and it causes all of these other metabolic changes. And just as a side note, metabolic isn't just weight loss. Your immune system is a part of your metabolism. The way your brain functions is a part of your metabolism. But it caused all of these metabolic changes. Then the researchers said, hey, you know what? If we put people on a low carb, high fat diet, it will mimic intermittent fasting. And that's actually how ketogenic eating was developed, to mimic intermittent fasting. And
now,
that's why they go hand in hand, is because they are literally trying to achieve the exact same thing.
Now, what is extended fasting, and what are the benefits of extended fasting versus intermittent, which is a short time window? Say, what the standard intermittent fast is a 16/8, right?
So the inside of the intermittent fasting and ketogenic world, there has been recently, like literally in the last 5 years, to try to really define the difference between intermittent and extended fast. And what has been so far accepted is that anything longer than 24 hours without any calorie consumption is considered an intermittent fast. So anything less than it's considered an extended fast.
Correct.
Less than 24 hours. So if you're doing a 16/8, if you're doing a 24, if you're doing anything that's less than 24 hours, it's all intermittent fasting. Extended fast is more than 24 hours. So
what's the longest extended fast you've ever gone on?
The longest fast I've done is a 3-day fast. And I have not gone past 3 days because I am a person that is all about the research, right?
Okay.
So everything that I talk about, I want to read a study about it. I want to know what the benefits are. I believe in alternative health, but I also believe that we are at a point in science where we can prove, like, why acupuncture works, why intermittent fasting works. So one of the areas of intermittent fasting that actually does not have a lot of research is extended fasting, right? And so what we know so far about extended fast is if your goal is detoxification, which is to the literal turnover of the cells to detoxify your body, we know that maxes hit its peak point at 3 days. After 3 days, there's really not a lot of, you don't get extra benefit.
Okay.
And the only research study that we know that tracked people with extremely low caloric intake for an extended period of time was actually done on Biggest Loser competitors, right? They went on these, even though they were eating food, it mimicked fasting because their caloric intake was so low.
Right.
But what they found is that it actually permanently damaged their metabolism.
Wow.
So that's another reason why doing fast longer than 3 consecutive days right now, we don't.
It's probably not a good thing.
Right. It's not a good idea.
So now for the Muslims and the listening audience, when we say, because I've done them at one point prior to Ramadan, I was once a month. Now tell us, you got a group, right, that does this?
Yes.
What is it on Facebook?
It is 3-day 3-day fast for beginners, I think.
Okay. I'm in the group. It's not a private group, but you got to sign up and you admit people in, and you can refer people.
Accept everybody.
Right. And and it's not an exclusively Muslim group either. So
right.
Explain to the listening audience, when we're saying we go 3 days, 4 days without food, they're like, whoa. But it is not a religious fast. Right. And how does it differ from the because whereas in the Muslim faith, we start at sunrise fasting and we break at sunset. and we do that for 30 days. How is this medicinal or metabolic fast that you're talking about? How does that work?
Right. So the group on Facebook is called 3-Day Immune Fast Support Group. So anybody can come and join. And what I've been trying to do is do kind of like a group 3-day water fast, like every season, every quarter. My goal is you can get support throughout the entire time, but we'll try to do it as a group at least 4 times a year. So the goal of a 3-day fast is to reset your immune system. So we have several research studies that shows that a 3-day fast can literally reset your entire immune system.
Mm-hmm.
That's going 3 days with no food, no caloric intake, where you are trying to get your insulin level to lower. And the important thing is the insulin level. So anybody listening to me probably heard me say 100 times, insulin is the domino hormone. It's the domino hormone.
Yes.
Because where your insulin is what's going to trigger over a dozen different hormones.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of the reasons why it actually resets your immune system is because when insulin level lowers, all of the mechanisms that create the cell turnover and renewal process all kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
And that cannot happen if your insulin level is high.
And
this is important because you'll have people, I have seen so many people, they'll be like, well, I'm going to detox by drinking fruit smoothies.
Yeah, what do they call fruit detox? Yeah.
And detox by drinking fruit smoothies because your body will not go into a detoxification process because your level is high.
Mm-hmm. And it's been proven that you can lower the blood sugar to a normal rate within 2 weeks of ketosis and intermittent fasting. And you're well on your way. I think I started out in 3 months, my diabetes was in remission, and it stayed in remission since October of 2019. And so, we've got a lot of, I was talking to some people that asked me to come into the office and coach them and help them out with what I've done to achieve whatever success I've achieved. I put my diabetes in remission, blood pressure, all my numbers are in the middle. And I lost 60 pounds. I didn't do it to lose 60 pounds. I did it because I was dying from diabetes, to be honest. And
so to me, you know what? I've had clients to do it even less time. So
right.
So my program is a 40-day program.
Yes, this wonderful book you have. Say it out loud, sis. I'm going to hold it up because we're streamed live.
MR40.com is where the program is. But the thing is,
MR40 method, right?
Yeah.
And can they get it on Amazon?
Yes. You can get it on Amazon.
Can they order it? What is it? Fitmuslima.com?
Nope. Amazon is the best way to get it.
Okay.
Go to Amazon.
But
I had one client where she started the program where her A1C was a 14.
That's where I was.
By day 40, it was 7.
Yes.
She literally split it in half in 40 days.
Right.
She started off taking insulin 5 times a day. Within the 40 days, she had to take her insulin 5 total times.
Right. My identical story.
Yeah, that is the immediate effect of eating lower carbs.
And then now dig this though, sis. When I went to see the doctor and he says, yo, what did you do? You were at a 7, you were 14 2 months ago. I told him, and he's like, okay, keep that up, but here's your prescription for insulin and metformin on your way out the door.
Well, you know what I tell people too? So I always have to make this disclaimer, particularly when I'm talking about diabetes, is understand that low-carb eating and ketogenic eating can create a significant and immediate effect on your diabetes, lowering your insulin level. When you decide to commit, never take your insulin or your metformin before you check you literally
Right.
prick your finger.
Because you can hurt yourself.
Because it immediately lowers your
Right.
insulin. So if you are starting in the morning and you are not eating carbs by the evening time, don't just take your normal dose because that's what you were supposed to.
That's going to lower your sugar even lower.
Right.
And that's what was happening. I was taking, in the beginning, I was still taking my insulin metformin. My sugar was like 60, 50, and I'm getting woozy. So I had to cut back, you know. And by the time I went to see the doctor, I'm not a doctor, and I wouldn't advise this, but I wasn't taking insulin or metformin when I went into that doctor's office, and my glucose was between 80 and 90. And I said, I'm not taking it anymore. And he was like, you don't have to. You're no longer diabetic. But he still wrote me a full prescription. He said, just in case you relapse. You know,
that is kind of like, just in case you decide to go have some.
Yeah, and don't cut me off of Big Pharma's payroll right now, because I'm getting paid for every subscription that I write, every prescription of insulin that I write. These doctors, I think.
But you know it also too. So from having some experience working within the medical system with doctors, being on, I'm not a doctor. Let me clarify that. But I've been on board at the hospital and been able to, you know, have really intimate conversations with doctors about what's going on in the medical system.
Right.
And even in public health. A lot of times, the medical community basically do not have confidence that people have enough knowledge or willpower or determination to change their health.
Well, most times doctors don't know. Most doctors that will tell you, I took a 3-hour course on nutrition, and the nutrition was a high carb nutrition understanding. And so most doctors aren't even aware of low carb. I know doctors that said, you know, like, you know, Dr. David Unwin and Jason Fung. He said, look, I'm just holding my patients' hands, watching them die. 30 years, I have not cured one diabetic until he started the low-carb diet. And the patient came to him and said, well, you told me not to eat sugar, right, Dr. David Unwin? Yes, but you never told me bread was sugar.
Yep.
And now
a lot of
he's got all these charts, you know.
Be like, yeah, well, I'm having corn and rice.
No. Right, 150 grams of rice is equal to 10 teaspoons of sugar, you know. And if you don't, and this is the other thing that our people don't know about, because and this is my mantra: sugar is sugar is sugar. And so it doesn't make a difference. Well, they say, well, I eat oranges and I eat apples and I eat bananas, because that is naturally what they call, quote unquote, naturally occurring sugar. And honey, naturally, and me and you had that debate. And because Allah says in the Quran, you should eat that. But he says it in the context of a medicine. So, I mean, I don't know. I know if I ate sugar every day, my glucose would be through the roof. But I know if I had a sore throat and I had some honey and some lemon, I'd probably put it in the tea.
I think that for most people, particularly, I have this argument all the time when I tell Muslims don't eat honey.
And a guava. For some reason, people swear guava is this sugar alternative. Like they're not going to get sick if they
do. It's lower on the glycemic index than honey, but it is extremely processed. So I used to actually tell people, oh, you know, it's better than honey. At least it's not so high on the glycemic index. But it is so processed, I do not recommend that people actually have it now. And I'm like, learn to love for the way that it's supposed to taste.
Now, I don't know if I was paying attention, but I think I don't know if we mentioned the aspect of the fasting that we're doing. The intermittent fasting and extended fasting is what is known as a wet fast. And when we do the ibadah fast, or the fast for Ramadan, or the fast for the pleasure of Allah, that's what is called a dry fast. And we stay away from every consumption of anything wet or dry. Whereas when you go on these 3-day fasts, you can consume water, coffee, tea. They even say what, bullet tea? Bullet coffee. You can do that.
I don't. You shouldn't actually do the bullet coffee
because that's cow. That's cow, right? It's
calories. High in fat. It's not.
Oh, so the fat violates the fast.
Right. Because it sets your metabolism in motion.
Right.
You don't want metabolism to go in motion. You want all of that energy to go towards the immune rebuilding process.
And for people that don't know, bullet coffee is basically coffee that is black coffee with butter or ghee as the creamer. I haven't tried it. Have you tried it?
Yes, I do. So
What do you think of it? Is it everybody raves about how good it is?
So it's good if you make it correctly. So one of the biggest problems I think that people who don't like it is because they will put a chunk of butter inside of their cup and they will stir it around, and that's the way it is. You cannot make it if you don't blend it. You have to actually have a blender.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yes, you have to have it. So the butter is going to be just like cream in your coffee, and then you also put coconut oil in it. I actually don't use coconut oil. I use MCT oil. So here is just a few side notes for people who do follow a ketogenic diet. There's a big emphasis on coconut oil, coconut oil, coconut oil. All the research about that's normally quoted about the benefits that can contained in coconut oil is not actually done on coconut oil. It's done on MCT oil, which is a component of coconut oil.
Okay.
So if you want to mimic the research, you should actually be using MCT oil. The reason why coconut oil is popular in the ketogenic community is because it's the oil that has the highest concentration of MCT oil, but it's not pure MCT oil. All the research that we talk about, the benefits of the brain and the benefits of fat burning, is actually using only the MCT part of the coconut oil, not the entire coconut oil itself.
Okay. Well, we've succinctly run out of time. This has become my favorite subject. I love to talk about it. And as we know, we can go on and on because I think we can save our people. You know, the main comorbidity that's attacking black people nowadays is two of them is obesity and diabetes that results from the obesity. And so if we can cure those two things, we can live, we can save. I've lost, and perhaps you have too, family, friends, many people who I now know unnecessarily we lost because of, you know, you can cure diabetes in 60 days, whereas I was on insulin for 7 years. So, and it only got worse, you know, and so taking Levemir and this, that, and the other, it's just delaying the inevitable, and it's a progressive, very adaptable, aggressive disease. So you've been listening to our shaker of ketogenesis, Shaker Mubaraka Ibrahim. She has this wonderful book called MR40 Method. It's going to get you metabolically healthy. Go to Amazon, get her book, and you will live longer. You will cure your diabetes. I want to thank you. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. You've been listening to Islam Today. Stay tuned for the Recovery Hour with our brother Rick Ford. Assalamu alaikum.